I am joined by the great Donna Halper. Listen.
Oh, she's joyful. She's wonderful. She's amazing. I put in a plug for my favorite charity while I'm at it. Is that okay? Is
Please.
that kosher? Well, it's Hanukkah, so of course it's kosher. The favorite charity for my house is a charity called Donors Choose. DONORSCHOOSE. Why I love it is it funds school supplies for kids in need, okay, all across the country. You go on the website, you pick a project, you pick a city, you pick a school, and kids get school supplies. And right now there is a desperate need, not just for school supplies, but winter coats, et cetera, et cetera. I can't say enough good things about Donors Choose. No, they don't pay me. No, I don't work for them, but I do donate. And no kidding, with the priorities in this country, the stuff we waste money on, oy. So if you can, help some kids get some school supplies and help some teachers get the stuff they need. Thank you. If we are going to create a more just universe, we need to model kindness, okay? You and I are radio people. I despair sometimes at what's happened to radio. And I'm not going to get into, this station, that station. I'm talking about the overall tone. Your show, friendly, happy to be on it. But I go across the dial and it's like, or the band or whatever you want to call it these days with the internet and everything else. And I hear people shouting at each other and screaming at each other. Okay, fine. I mean, I understand. And I'm not just talking politics. I'm talking sports. You know what? I'm a Patriots fan. But let Tom Brady be happy and healthy. I do not wish death upon him. I do not hope that, his children. And I'm like, what? What is going on with people? So my attitude is, whatever team you support, it's a wonderful team. My team is good too. It's a wonderful team. Let's all be friendly. Let's have our competition, whatever side you're on politically, whatever rock band you like. I mean, I even see this with music. I'll go on social media and I say, well, if you don't like this band, you're a moron. I'm like, no. Obviously, I am a big Rush fan, obviously. But I understand that Rush aren't everyone's cup of tea. I get it. And as far as I'm concerned, my mother always used to say, you get more flies with sugar than you do with vinegar. Calling people names and insulting them, I don't see how that wins anyone over. So I'm happy to be on a show where I can just talk about music, talk about
whatever you want.
Talk about whatever, but do it in a spirit of friendliness and in a spirit of kindness. Because as I'm doing this, it's Hanukkah.
Yes,
it's been kind of tough for me. My husband is in the hospital with pneumonia. We had to rush him to the hospital over Thanksgiving, but he's got good doctors. He's got a lot of people praying for him, and I'm really hoping for a good result. But my point is, with all the screaming and shouting, some people are missing the big picture. And the big picture is, if you got your health, you got everything. If you got people you care about, you got everything. You may not always agree with them, but they're there. And as Baby Yoda says, just chill. And whatever you celebrate, let 1,000 flowers bloom, be happy, be together, and remember kindness.
Yep, I'm a Buddhist, so I totally understand that.
And can I talk about that with respect to Rush? Because I used to get into this with people all the time. Okay.
Yep.
People were like, oh my God, the guys are they're atheists and this and that. You know what? They were completely tolerant of my beliefs. They were completely tolerant of the beliefs of family members who saw things differently from how they did. Getty does not have any deep religious beliefs, but he does have deep cultural beliefs, and he enjoys spending the holidays with his family. Does that make him a hypocrite? Heavens no. As I said, nobody is that rigid about it. They're not checking boxes. Well, so you stood in front of a menorah, therefore you can't call yourself an atheist. Sure you can. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Have a lovely day. But the reality is, here we all are. It's all music. And the guys in the band were always very tolerant of who I was, what I believed, what I cared about, all of these things. So it was never a problem. Case in point, I'm famously a non-drinker and a non-smoker, and I've never used drugs. I absolutely do remember the 60s. Yes, I do. And I was around all kinds of people who made me wrong constantly about the fact that I wouldn't get high with them. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Not the guys in Rush. Never. Not even once. I mean, when they knew I was coming backstage, I've told this story. When they knew I was coming backstage, they would always make sure there were like fruit juices for me and salad. And, I'm not a vegetarian, but I think they just made the assumption like, hey, if you're going to have fruit, you might as well have salad. And, and we're not, everybody in the room, they're all munching on salad. And why not? So if people want to have a beer, God bless them. If people want to do some weed, none of my business. But the fact that I don't, they never judged me. They never insulted or mocked me, and they were not happy if anyone did insult me or mock me, because the way I was fine with them, and the way they were was fine with me. We were friends.
They loved you.
People ask me all the time, would you ever talk to them? Well, for obvious reasons, I can't talk to Neil anymore, but his music lives on. And I would be lying to you if I said I were really close to Neil when he lived. I was not. We kept in touch in a sort of peripheral way. We all knew some of the same people. A couple of times we got together backstage and kibitzed and stuff like that. But I was always closer with Geddy and Alex, okay? And I keep in touch with Alex. I keep in touch with Geddy's sister, with a number of friends of the band. So in a way, that communication is still there. Do we hang out? No, we live in different cities. We're all off in different, sets of activities. People ask me, well, are Alex and Geddy going to get back together and bring in another in your dreams? In your dreams, okay?
Exactly.
Because the truth is, if you saw Beyond the Lighted Stage,
yes,
and I
did.
know you did, and I know you did, if you saw it, Geddy said, if there's no Neil,
there's no Rush.
There's no Rush. I mean, when he went away after he was in that profound depression and lost his first wife and his daughter and, went off on that motorcycle ride and this and that.
The Ghost Rider, that book was amazing.
Everybody and their sister was sending audition tapes. Hey, can we be Rush's drummer? And Geddy was like, no. And let me say that again. No, because no. And if you don't believe me, no. He just was not interested in doing anything with anyone else other than Neil. And when Neil passed, the guys were like, that period of our lives is over. The music lives on. Alex said to me, and he said to other people, it's not like he just said it to me, like I'm so swell, but he said to other people, at some point, if our schedules align, we might collaborate on some new music, like write a song or something. But at this point, we're both involved in individual projects. We both have our families, our grandkids, this and that. And we know the fans would like us to get back together. Probably not. And I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying like never, but I am saying really unlikely because our lives are going in different directions. Do we keep in touch? Absolutely. Are we going to go back in the studio? not so likely, but who knows? Meanwhile, I still say, look at all the work Neil left us with. I mean, how lucky are we? And other than that, we still have those memories. So yeah, I don't keep in touch with Neil, as I said, for obvious reasons, but I do talk to Alex now and then. I do talk to members of Getty's family. I do talk to various folks at the record company. I had, before the pandemic, I had a lovely lunch with Bob Roper, the guy that sent me that Rush record all those years ago. We absolutely keep in touch. And, you know, on social media, you're never alone. I mean, that's how you and I found each other. So,
And I'm so thankful for the connection.
This worldwide community of Rush fans.
Oh my goodness.
It's such a blessing.
Yes.
To know that those folks are out there. And I try very hard to keep in touch with as many of them as I can for obvious reasons. I can't answer every email or every tweet, but I try to answer as many as I can. I mean, I do work full time, but you know, I try to answer as many as I can because these are fans. These are the people that supported the band that I love. The guys in the band were appreciative. I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative of you, sir. I mean, John, you are just, it is wonderful that you still care about this band. And that's why I took time to just like time out of my day doing what I was doing for work to just set aside a few minutes to talk with you. And it's a privilege. And I hope I'm not.
It's an honor and privilege to me, and Rush are my heroes, and you're my hero because let's face facts. You introduced the world with the song Working Man in Cleveland, Ohio.
How many times, little DJ talk here, folks, how many times have you played the tunes and played a tune that you thought was just, oh my God, this is amazing, and it died a painful death? Nobody bought it, nobody called, nobody cared, and you're like, how can people not see this is a great song? Or you play some other song that is a giant piece of crap and the phones light up and everybody wants, and you're like, oh my God, I think I am going to flow up. Okay, how can anyone like this song? When you're a DJ, that happens all the time. When I heard Working Man, I would be lying to you if the heavens opened and choirs of angels and this and that. No. I thought it was a great song. I thought it was a perfect record for Cleveland. I had no idea if the people in the audience were going to go yay or nay, because you never know. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to a song and thought, this is going to be huge. And it was what we used to call in the industry a turntable hit. In other words, back in the day when you had like vinyl records, you played them on turntables. The DJs loved to play the song. Nobody else did. So I was like really concerned, like, is this going to be a turntable hit? Is this going to be something that like people at WMMS like and nobody else cares about it? Because there was never any way to predict. I cannot tell you, working for WMMS as the music director or being a music director at other stations, how many songs I thought were just great records, never heard from again. And how many others I just cringed every time I had to play them. And people are calling, will you play that again? I'm like, oh God, please, no. But there it was. So I brought it downstairs. And I said to Denny Sanders, you know, great Canadian band, great song. I think it's going to resonate with Cleveland. There was no way to know that the phones were going to light up. And yeah, people thought it was Led Zeppelin. But the reality is they liked the song because many people are song oriented. Okay. You and I know from being in radio, there are actives, there are passives. Actives are people that know every single thing about every single artist. They know what day Paul McCartney said blah, blah, blah. They know what day the folks in Nirvana recorded yada, yada. They know the producer. They can give you 90 pieces of trivia. If you say it was recorded in 1991 and it was actually 1992, an active will call you immediately and let you know that you are just a total dork. You don't know anything. It was 1990. So yeah. But while actives are the noisiest bunch, they only make up about 10% of your audience. The other 90% are passives. They never call. They have no idea who sang whatever, but they know what they like. We used to joke. I've told this story before. We used to joke back in the day when everybody would go to record stores and buy vinyl records. A passive walks into a record store, okay, and says to the clerk, I heard a song on my favorite radio station. I really want to buy it. And the clerk is like, terrific. You know, we get all these records here. Can you tell me a little more about it? It had the word love in it. Okay, well, was it by a male or a female artist? I think so. Okay, well, was it fast or slow? Yeah. Okay, it was the Beatles. All right, thank you. Yeah, the Beatles. That was, yeah. They don't know one from another. If you play it for them, then yes, they know that they like it, okay? So adults being mostly song-oriented, I figured they would like the song, even if they had no idea who this band Rush was. And interestingly enough, a lot of them thought it was Mahogany Rush, which was a band from Montreal, totally different bunch of people, but people didn't know. So it took a while for them to get familiar with the band Rush, band from Toronto, 3 guys, you know, and oh, okay. And then we started playing Finding My Way. And then we, you know, and as we started playing more songs from that record, then people got more familiar. But my point in this long and rambling dialogue is there's no way to predict. So I was delighted that the song became popular with the Cleveland audience, but I would be lying to you if I said, oh no, I knew immediately that this was going to be a huge hit. No, I knew immediately that this was a great song for Cleveland, but I didn't know that it would resonate with the audience the way it resonated with me.
Well, Rush has that impact, and you've had that impact. I mean, you introduced the world to one of the greatest bands of all time, my favorite band of all time.
When I hear the opening chords of Finding My Way, I still get the chills. Okay,
oh my God.
That whole guitar at the oh God, it takes me back. The same with Working Man. I mean, they tried to not play it for a while, but people kept asking. People were like, "You got to play Working Man."
They did it on their recent tours, and they did such a great job of it. And Alex, man, he's such an amazing guitar player. My wife's favorite guitar player, because she loves his emotion. I mean, sometimes Alex won't even look at the guitar. He's just
I know,
keeping his head up. Like if you watch him play the song Mission.
And Getty with the bass. I mean, these guys were musicians, okay? When I was at WRVR in New York, which was a jazz station, the greatest compliment that a jazz musician used to give another jazz musician was saying, he really has respect for his instrument. And I mean, yeah, I know that sounds kind of vaguely double entendre-ish, but I know what they meant. What they meant was these guys are not mailing it in, and these ladies, they're not just mailing it in. They have deep, deep concern for the quality of the music that they are trying to share with the audience. It's a communication. Neil said that to me one time, and nobody believed me, but I knew. Neil said something along the lines of, he was really upset when people came to their concerts wasted. Not that he didn't party, not that he didn't like to party, but he felt like, he said, I'm up there for 3 hours playing my off, and these people aren't even going to remember it the next day. Why are you there? And so that resonated with me because it's like respect for your instrument. The drums for Neil, the guitar, the bass, these instruments for the guys. were never just like, oh, ho hum, let's play another concert. You never saw Rush mail it in, ever.
No.
You never saw them just go through the motions. Every single time they played, they were putting it out 110%. And I'm not just saying that because,
times,
they're my friends, blah, blah, blah. No, I've seen bands, and so have you, that were just, oh, God, this is like, will this be over soon? But that was never Rush. They gave so much to the fans, and they wanted the fans to be present with it. And in most cases, they were. I never saw concerts where the people in the audience were just like, it was part of this like giant experience where everyone shared in it. It was just glorious. It really was.
3 hours long.
Yeah.
I went to a concert one night, and Rush fans, what I love about Rush fans, it's like a brotherhood and sisterhood. Like, you get connected with all these people that share the same interests, obviously, that you have. And Rush fans are not normal fans. Like, we're diehard. So we like know every track. We know all the albums. We know how long a song is, whatever. So I go into the bathroom one night at a concert at PNC Bank Arts Center in New Jersey, where I'm originally from. I now live in Vegas. So I go in there, and some guy's in there. He's like, hey, man, did you see the show last night? I'm like, no, I'm here tonight, though, and I can't wait to see it. I had no idea the set list. He's like, I don't want to spoil it for you, but they open up with 2112. Okay, thanks. And he's like, gosh, I'm not even done. They do this. I mean, he broke down the whole concert for me.
Yeah. I'm not even surprised.
He was so excited. I didn't get mad.
Oh, I know. And you'd see people air drumming along, and
I'm a drummer because of Neil. Like,
the whole air drumming thing, and yep.
Cygnus X1. Like, I mean, my first album that I had from Rush was A Show of Hands, believe it or not. And I just loved it. There was something different. And I was in high school. I was 14 years old. I'm now 43. But I was 14 at the time. And I was listening to like Motley Crue and great bands like Iron Maiden. Awesome. Something about Rush really stuck out to me. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, it's just amazing music. And my father was a great jazz guitar player. I go to him. I'm like, I want to buy a drum set. I want to play drums. And he's like, kind of disappointed because he wanted me to play guitar naturally. But he's like, okay. And he's like, what brought that on? I'm like, I heard a song called Mission by Rush, and it just put me on a mission. I loved everything about it. It was so explosive. It's so perfect and so just beautifully done. And, you watch the VHS tape from back in the day, for those that are listening that are younger, there was something called the VHS tape you put in and you watch it. And I know it's kind of like complicated for a lot of people.
Betamax. Remember Betamax?
And I'm watching Geddy playing keyboards with his feet, singing, playing bass.
Yep.
Alex is doing his thing. Neil is in top form. He was always in top form. I mean, going back to Neil real quick, you ever know a drummer to get nominated for a Grammy for a drum solo?
In the case of Neil, I wasn't even surprised. Back in the era of jazz drumming, if and when jazz had been taken more seriously by the Academy, there were a lot of jazz drummers that
Art Blakey
were widely admired. I mean, come on, Burning for Buddy. I mean, come on, Buddy Rich. Hello.
Simon Phillips was amazing on that thing.
Yeah.
Everybody did top notch.
Yeah.
Everybody. I have both volumes and I've studied them. I'm a drummer myself and I love jazz. I'm going to send you some of my music. Hopefully you enjoy it. It's very progressive. It's not like Rush progressive because there's only one Rush. Like, you cannot. That's the thing about Rush that I love, is that they adapted with the times so well. And if you look at their early stages, it's rock and roll, like Working Man and Fly By Night and Caress the Steel and 2112. And then they started getting like progressive around that era. And they were always forward progressive thinkers in terms of music. Then you get to like Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres. Hemispheres is probably one of my favorite records of all time. And you get like songs like Circumstances, and then you get Cygnus Book 2. Like, wow, man. Then you get Permanent Waves, which is a
Yep.
completely different.
Absolutely. But as the guys said in Beyond the Lighted Stage, sometimes they kind of would go off on a musical tangent and they'd go too far off. Okay. And they'd have to kind of reel themselves back in. I mean, they never wanted to be a top 40 band. They always wanted to like try different things, but they understood as musicians, some things are going to be more accessible for the fans and some things are just going to be accessible to other musicians. And they always wanted to make sure that there was that connection with the fans without selling out, without selling out.
Never.
That's what I mean, that's exactly what was so important. They always remained true to who they were, glittering prizes and endless compromises shattered the illusion of integrity. Nah, they were never into making those endless compromises. There were things they would do. There were things they wouldn't do. And selling out who they were new.
Look at 2112. Like the record company told them, you're going to get dropped. We need a hit. They wanted Closer to the Heart at that time, in other words.
Which is a great song, by the way.
Amazing song. But then they come out with an opus that's over 20 minutes about a space journey about guitars.
Yep. And that's Rush for you. I mean, but there again, I respect their creativity. I applaud their creativity. But I would be lying to you if I said that every single album was just, oh my God, genius. There are some albums I like better than others. And I'm sure that there are many fans who, if you got them down to it, would admit the same thing. Okay. Right. It's like I have a favorite restaurant, but I sure don't want to eat there like 8 days a week. I really don't. I understand the need to try different things. Some of them worked better for me than others.
Oh, of course.
But so what? So what? They had the right, they had the freedom, they had the ability to try new things. And when they worked, they worked. And when they didn't, they went on to the next thing. God bless them.
I'm going to shout out my mother here. So
Yay
the first
for Mom!
time,
Yay, Mom!
The first time I heard Moving Pictures, we were decorating a Christmas tree and she put Moving Pictures on. And I'm like, wow. Like, I was already listening to Rush. And if you're a new Rush fan and you start buying albums like out of secret, it could be all over the place. Like you hear Grace Under Pressure, then you put on like Fly By Night. You're like, whoa, this is such a different tone, texture. But they were always great. Like there's certain albums, like you said, I like better than others. We could all agree, I think Moving Pictures is probably one of the greatest albums ever released. Period.
I would not disagree with you. I think Grace Under Pressure is a really good.
That's amazing. Distant Early Warning, The Enemy Within is one of my favorite songs of all time. And Neil does these beautiful things that I try to take a page from. When he plays the drum parts to Geddy's vocals, like there's a certain fill at the end of Enemy Within where Geddy goes, yeah, I can't sing. And then Neil does that on the drums, and it's just like the little subtleties. Hold Your Fire also has a lot of that. Power Windows has a lot of that. I love that period for Rush. I'm going to fast forward and talk about the last album they did. And this is around the time I met my wife. And I told her, we started dating. I'm like, one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite band of all time, just released one of their greatest records ever. And I'm like, if they end it here, I'm totally fine with it. The Wreckers, Caught Up to Believe. And then I heard The Garden. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to get emotional right now. I started tearing when I heard that song. When Neil's talking about, a garden to nurture and protect and, the gifts that you give. I'm like, this is just beyond what, like, music is great, but this is something different, like.
When people say to me, oh yeah, Rush, they're like metal and they can't do a love song, I'm like, are you serious or are you delirious? I mean, if the garden is not one of the great songs, a great rock and roll love song, Entre Nous, I'm sorry, what a great song. Entre Nous is just an amazing song, but the garden takes it to another level. And I know people who just like give me a song that I can use to introduce people to Rush. And I'm like, The Garden. End of story. Thank you. Great song.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that is that there's a movie called I Love You, Man.
Yes, they were big. The guy, Paul Rudd, big Rush fan.
Paul, like, he puts on like Rush for his chick. You know, she's like, I want to hear a Rush song. That's always the trick, is that to find the how do you break down Rush? Like, to find the perfect song to put on. I put on some weird ones for whatever reason. I'm like, one time I was dating this woman and she's like, I want to hear a Rush song. You're very passionate about them. I put on the Necromancer and she's like, I don't really know what this. I'm like, no, I got another one for you. Roll the Bones. Here. You know, let's put on Roll the Bones.
Why are we here? Because we're here.
It's catchy. It's got hooks. Great era too. Counterparts. I love that album.
Hey, I still introduce people to songs like Limelight and Spirit of Radio and Tom Sawyer. Yeah, I know they've been played to death, but not to someone who isn't familiar with the band. You gotta, there's, as a DJ, I jokingly created something which I call the DJ rule, and I use it when I'm teaching public speaking, okay? The DJ rule is that song that you personally can't stand is somebody's favorite record, okay? That subject that you don't want to give a talk about, there's people in the audience that can't wait to hear something about that subject. It's not always about you. Sometimes it really is about the audience. And when I think of introducing people to a Rush song, I know folks that are going, oh my God, that's such a tired song. And everybody's not to someone who's brand new to the band. For them, it's fresh, it's new, they've never heard it before. And they're like, oh, that's a pretty good song. What else you got? That sort of thing. So it's like, yeah, the DJ rule. It may not be my favorite song, but it's somebody else's, and they are so grateful that you are playing it. And with Rush, you've got like 4 decades worth of work. So there's always something you can find.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they change and adapt with the times so well, especially around the Signals era, like when they started bringing in some like reggae. Like we talked about The Enemy Within as well from Grace Under Pressure. Like where you get like this little bit of like reggae type, ska type thing happening. What got you into broadcasting and radio? Because you're amazing at it. And obviously you introduced the world to one of the greatest bands ever. So what got you into that?
Being a music director. Actually, to be perfectly honest, what got me into it was sexism. Let us tell the truth about this, okay? Your younger listeners are going to be like, sexism, was that a thing? And the answer is, well, yes, it was. And in some places, it still is. When I first went up to my college radio station, and I've told this story before, so for those that have heard it, bear with me for a second. When I went up to my college radio station in 1964, ready to be on the air, the guy that was the program director said I couldn't be on the air. And I said, why? And he said, well, because you're a girl. And I'm like, and your point is? He was like, well, we don't have girls on the air. And I was like, well, why don't you? He says, well, they don't sound good. And I said, well, how many of them have you had on the air? He said, none, they don't sound good, which seemed like catch-22 if you've never had one on the air. And if you're a program director, okay, and you've got a DJ that doesn't sound good, do your job, work with that person. It's kind of like being a football coach or a baseball manager. Don't just criticize your player, work with them a little bit, or her, as the case may be. Nope, nobody was interested. I had to embark upon a 4-year battle that finally ended in 1968 with my becoming the first female DJ in the history of my university and in the history of the radio station. Donna, what's your point? Program directors were men. Music directors were often women. It had become sort of a gendered position because just like, the boss was a man, but his secretary was a woman. And in many cases, the secretary did more managerial work than the boss did. But but it didn't matter. That's where the culture was. Women were assistants, okay? But a lot of women took that position and made it theirs. Rosalie Tremblay just died this past week. I felt terrible about it. She had been in ill health for a long time, and I believe she also had Alzheimer's. But Rosalie Tremblay was one of the great female music directors, or one of the great male music directors. My point is, in an industry where this was what women could be, she took it and she ran with it. And so many bands of the late 60s into the 70s owe their success to her. They said so. Bob Seger said so. There are a multitude of bands that she started their careers. The Guess Who. I mean, she got them played. She championed them. She was kind of an idol for me. I only met her at a conference a couple of times and kind of got to pay my respects, you know. But that's my point. This is what women could be. So I said, fine. I'll be the best music director I can possibly be. And at every station I worked at, I tried to be the best music director. I tried to audition the new songs. I made friends with the record promoters. I tried to find the songs that I thought my audience would want. And I tried to break new bands. That was really important to me, okay? So that's what I did for years. I really enjoyed being a music director. I would be lying to you if I said, oh, I never wanted to be a program director. I absolutely wanted to be a program director, but that wasn't how life was in those days. So, you know, you ride the horse in the direction it's going. And the direction it was going was take on being a music director and be a really good one. And it was because I was a music director that I was able to champion Rush. If I hadn't been a music director, and if I hadn't made friends with record promoters like Bob Roper, we wouldn't be having this conversation decades later.
I was telling my wife last night that you are responsible for changing or creating the history of rock and roll in such an inspiring way. Like, so many drummers, so many musicians, so many people, whether you like Rush or not, understand like how great they are. You introduced them to the world.
No guarantee when I introduced them to the world that people were going to like them as much as I did. I cannot tell you the number of bands that I introduced to the world that the sensational Alex Harvey band was a huge hit in Cleveland and in Los Angeles. Other than that, forget about it. People lined up to see them in Cleveland. Alex Harvey, he was amazed. He had tears in his eyes. He was like, we've been playing all across the United States. No one knows who we are. We come here, people are like singing along to our songs, and they're doing the thing with the lighters at the end, and they're holding hands. And I mean, I was like, yeah, there was absolutely a specific kind of record that resonated in Cleveland.
Blue Collar City, hard working.
So my point is the fact that Working Man and the fact that the band Rush resonated with the Cleveland audience, I was delighted, but I had no way of predicting. I would love to take credit for my brilliance and my vision. I'd like to believe I was a good music director. And I think there are people that would tell you I had good ears, like Rosalie Tremblay, like a number of the other women of that era that were music directors. I'd like to tell you that I could hear a hit and that a lot of the songs that I predicted became hits, and that would be true. But there were also other songs that I thought should have been hits, and they just didn't happen. So I spent, oh my God, nearly 2 decades music directing. It was a wonderful time. I loved every bit of it. I wished that I had been taken more seriously. I wished that I had gotten equal pay. And I wished that I had been promoted, because when a guy was the music director, he was promoted to program director. And they said, oh, wow, he had great experience as a music director. When a woman was a music director. She was never promoted. And they said, all she ever was a music director. So there was that. And I had to live with that. And that's one of the reasons why years later, I decided to just start my own radio consulting business. And I specialized in small and medium market stations. And I did that for almost 3 decades. So I must have been okay at it.
I think you're more than okay at it.
But my point is, I did all this stuff in an era where women, by and large, were not taken seriously. And, you know, I don't want to turn this into this, feminism and yada, yada.
Yeah. You talk about whatever you want. I'll be listening.
But the truth is, times really have changed on some levels.
Yeah.
Today, there are women program directors. Nobody thinks twice about it. Today, there are women general managers. There's a few women that own radio stations, blah, blah, blah. But my point is, I was a little ahead of my time in that regard. Not just me, but the other women that were in this situation. And it took a while for society to change. I never wanted to get a job because I was a woman. I just didn't want to get excluded from a job because I was a woman. It was like, give me a shot, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
I say that all the time. That's my expression I always use. Put me in, coach. Let me play.
Then leave me there. And if I'm not good, then take me out. But just give me a chance. And that's all I tried to do with all of these bands. I mean, I still remember calling the band's management, Rush, and calling, Vic Wilson and Ray Daniels, because back then they had 2 managers. Mm-hmm. And I believe I talked to Vic first, and he was just stunned when I hey, your band is really big in Cleveland. And he was like, Cleveland, we can't get arrested in Toronto. I mean, nobody will play our music in Toronto. And I'm like, well, congratulations. You're a big hit in Cleveland, because this guy named Bob Roper from A&M of Canada sent me down your record. And he was like, oh. And it was like, he didn't believe it. So my point is, you just never know. I was glad that I was able to give some musicians their start, just like Rosalie Tremblay did, just like Denise Oliver did in Baltimore, just like a number of other female music directors did. We got people their start. And that was a wonderful thing to do. And to this day, I'm glad I had a part in that. And even if not all of them went on to become huge, I'm still glad I did it.
You changed the life of millions of people, like around the world.
It changed my own life too. If you had told me, and I've said this before, this is not new. If you had told me in April and May of 1974 that this band, whose music I was getting played in Cleveland, was going to go on to become my friends, and that I would be still in touch with them 4 decades later, that I would still be talking to their families, that I would still be hanging out with members of their record company. If you had told me that back in 1974, I would have said, yeah, right, of course. And yet here we are, as we're doing this, it's 2021, okay? And I'm still in touch with a number of the folks in the Rush orbit. And I consider myself profoundly fortunate. I am very grateful for it.
It's well deserved.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, I never expected it. I never predicted it. It's just something that I'm very grateful for. I fought for the guys. I got them airplay. I called other stations and told them to play the band. I mean, I did whatever I could to be a friend. I can tell you hundreds of musicians that I did that for and never got so much as a thank you. They never, they wanted me to play their record, and I never heard from them again. But the guys in Rush were unique in the fact that they kept in touch. They were grateful. What you see is what you get with those guys. And the truth is, that's not the case with everyone. There really are people in the music industry that are giant and major league jerks. And unfortunately, we had to work with those folks too. I was sexually harassed by a couple of musicians. I mean, there were just people that it was like I cringed when they came to town. But the reality is, there were also some wonderful people, and
Right.
Rush were just nice people. And that's how they remained. And as I said, here we are, like close to 50 years later, and we're still talking about this, and we're still in touch. How lucky am I?
I know. But like I said, well deserved. Let me ask you a question about being a DJ in the 70s. You were pretty much around some of the greatest music that was ever
yes,
produced.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like Boston, Toto, things of that
Yes.
nature. Yes. What were some of your other favorite bands outside of Rush?
Well, to be honest with you, as a music director, I never thought in terms of favorite bands, okay? I thought in terms of songs that I like to play. Like, for example, Aerosmith, Dream On. I know it's been played to death, but when it first came out, it wasn't a hit. We brought it back at WMMS. We helped to make that song a hit. And I'm almost sure I am recalling that correctly, okay? Ditto for songs like Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. First time it came out, nothing. Second time around, huge. So that was also a really fun thing to do, to take a band that there was a particular song and you just thought it was a great song and you reintroduced it. There was a local band in Cleveland, the Michael Stanley Band. Michael just passed recently. And he had a song called Let's Get the Show on the Road. Never really a big hit anywhere else. If you've got it, you should check it out. It's a wonderful song. And it was massive in Cleveland. We got behind it and we helped to just take it to the next level. So there were songs like that, okay? I mean, I grew up with top 40, for heaven's sake. I got a ton of top 40 hits. We could go on for days. My tastes are very eclectic. But as I said, for me, I was always thinking like a music director. I was always thinking, wow, here's a great song and somebody really needs to give this a re-listen. And we would try to bring it back for people. In some cases, it succeeded. In other cases, nah, it just wasn't going to happen. But at least we know we tried. So that was kind of the fun thing about being at a station in a time when music directors and program directors could still pick the music, when you didn't have 97 people telling you what to play, and when you could take a band that no one ever heard of, even a band that wasn't signed, and just give them a shot. There was when I was in New York as the A&R director at Mercury Records for a year, there was a band called Wild Cherry. And they came to me with a song called Play That Funky Music. And back then they had the whole title, Play That Funky Music, White Boy. I knew it was going to be a hit the moment I heard it. My boss said, that's never going to be a hit. Black people won't like it. White people won't like it. And he fired me, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, he did. Meanwhile, the band Wild Cherry, they signed with, I believe, Epic Records. The song went on to be #1. It didn't get me my job back, but at least I knew I was right. Now, again, my point is, thinking like a music director, I just knew when I heard that song, it's bouncy, it's catchy, it's got a good beat, it's easy to dance to. Yep. So I had so many songs like that when I listened to them, I'd be sitting in the studio just, singing along, And there were others that were like, oh God, do I really have to play this? But There you go. It was a great job. I miss radio every day of my life. Some great music came on. And it was so good to be a part of it. It was so good to see some of those bands go on and become famous. I love the Guess Who. I really, really loved the Guess Who, okay? These Eyes remains one of my favorite songs ever, okay? And I got to meet Burton Cummings. I mean, that was kind of cool. That was the other thing, like, meeting your heroes, like the people that I was just a working class kid from Dorchester, Massachusetts, raised in Roslindale. nobody expected that I would ever be anybody. Nobody expected that I'd meet famous people. I never expected it. And yet there I am meeting Bruce Springsteen and meeting Fleetwood Mac and, you know, meeting Madonna and meeting Burton Cummings. And just the fact that I was able to meet some of these folks, that was just so cool. And as I said, there were certain songs. I am very song oriented. There were certain songs that when I would hear them, they would take me back to what was going on in my life.
Yes.
Case in point, a song called Silver Spring by Fleetwood Mac, actually by Stevie Nicks. I could not get through that song without crying because I was like breaking up with somebody that I'd been with for 5 years. And, you know, just I'd hear that song and it would just be like, oh, but, you know, you had to pull it together and just do your job. And there really were songs like that where if I heard them, I would be, oh yeah, I remember the city I was in, the people I was with, who I was hanging with, who I was dating. There was a song by the Moody Blues called Gypsy. And it has the chorus line, left without a hope of coming home. That song always resonated with me because as a DJ, I couldn't find any work in Boston. I had to go to Cleveland. I had to go to New York. I had to go to Washington, D.C. I was away from my friends, my family, the people I loved for 10 years. And when I would hear Gypsy, that would just be, yeah, that's how I felt, left without a hope of coming home. And there were certain songs like that.
You know, I got choked up listening to that because the thing about music for me, when I think about Rush, certain bands like Toto, like, you know, song Africa, like when I hear that chorus, it's gonna take a lot to drag me away. I can't sing.
99 is a great song. That should have been a bigger
oh my God.
What a great song that was. And I've told the story about Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty. I mean, what a shame that he passed. I mean, you know, I know his family doesn't appreciate people talking about the alcoholism, but he was such a great talent. And there were so many people in the music industry whose lives were cut short by drugs or alcohol. But there were people that I literally saw destroying themselves, and it broke my heart. Baker Street. There was a line in that song about, you know, when you wake up, it's a new morning, sun is shining, it's a new morning, you're going home. I still can't talk about this. And I've told the story about how I finally got a job back in Boston and how I was driving. I was driving across the, you know, Mass Turnpike and getting into range of the Boston stations. And I started, you know, fiddling the dial because back in those days, you still had dials. And I was like pushing the buttons, looking for a song I liked. And just as I got into range of the Boston stations, there's Baker Street playing right at the line. When you wake up, it's a new morning, sun is shining, it's a new morning, you're going home. And I'm sorry, it just takes me back to the 10 years I was away. I wouldn't trade any of it in. I met wonderful people. Some of it was harder than others. There were a lot of people who kind of really judged me behind the fact that I didn't party with them. And then there were other people that were like, hey, whatever, let 1,000 flowers bloom. I met all kinds of people, you know, every kind of people. And the thing is, when I finally did get to come home, it was music that carried me home. Because my life, you know, there's a song called Hot Summer Night. There was a time not too far gone when I was changed by just a song. That's me. That's me. Yep. That's my life. My life has been changed by songs. My life was changed by Working Man. My life was changed by Baker Street. My life was changed by certain songs that just resonate with me to this day. And when I hear them, I'm like, yeah, that song.
This is the second time you're getting me choked up over here because I have something I call Music Appreciation Hour. I go out on my balcony and I just put on Rush or Toto or Boston or Chicago or Journey, like bands that I love. Even like, you know, Tupac, Eminem, like, you know, whatever I'm feeling at that moment, Chevelle, modern bands like Tool and stuff. And I go out there and I just put it on and I lose myself in the thought of just relaxation and how great these bands are. I put, ironically, the other day, Grace Under Pressure on, which you just mentioned earlier.
Oh, I love that album.
One of your favorite albums. I put that thing on start to finish. After Image almost made me cry.
Yep.
Like, and I heard the song literally hundreds of times. And I'm sitting out there, I'm like, this song is so excellent.
What else is a great song? And it's not by Rush, but it's still a great song. Voices Carry.
Mm-hmm.
And Till Tuesday. And I was so glad that Amy Mann did a collaboration with Rush because I mean, she is just brilliant. She really is. And Voices Carry resonated for me probably differently from how it does for some people, because if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt like you had to just push down who you were to keep the relationship because the other person was just like manipulative and dominating, and this was like what today we would call a toxic relationship, but you loved the person, you know. And when I hear that song and the very, very, very faded end where the last thing she says is something like, I wish he would just let me talk. It's just like, I've been in relationships like that. Yep. So, you know, so again, you know, there are Rush songs. That's why I resonated with The Garden, a garden to nurture and protect. Our life is a garden. What are we going to be? What are we going to give? And what are we going to leave for the next generation? I've been in some videos recently with a group of Rush fans. You can probably find them on YouTube. And I did an analysis of The Garden a couple of months ago. And it was just, I mean, that song for me has so much in it that is just noteworthy, that you can analyze, that you can experience. And best the lyrics. Lesson there, I believe, that song is a fitting farewell to Neil, because he left us a garden to nurture and protect.
A measure for a life, man. Like, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm about to cry.
Yes, yes.
The measure of a life. Like, and I told my wife this, like, if Rush ends it here, and in a lot of ways, I kind of knew that was going to happen. It's in my top 5 favorite Rush albums of all time, Clockwork Angels. And I'm like, I don't know. It's going to be hard to follow this. I mean, it's Rush. They're capable of anything. But that last song did something to me. Like, when I heard it, I actually cried the first time I listened to it. And when Alex hits that guitar solo.
Oh, yeah.
And then Geddy's bass is doing his thing.
Yep. I've also said before, and I'll say it again, I always like Driven.
Yes.
Completely different album. When I hear the lines, and I know, again, some people interpret stuff differently from me, and that's fine. When I hear the line, it's my turn to drive, I take it like taking on your life, taking on the things that have stopped you or slowed you down. It's like, take the wheel. It's like, it's my turn to drive. I'm going to be the captain of my ship. I'm going to turn my life in the direction that I want it to. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. It's like, don't despair. Don't just sit there like, well, I guess things will never get better. You don't know if things will get better. But if you don't get out of the stands and onto the field, it's my turn to drive.
I love that, because that's exactly how I interpret it too, is because he talks about being in a deep, dark hole and all this type of stuff. But then he's like, it's my turn to drive. And if you notice, the temperament of the song changes a little bit, where it's a little bit more positive. You know, the song is so brilliant. First of all, for those that are listening, I'm a nerd. I pay attention to all the detail. The drumming is in 7 and 6. It keeps going back and forth.
Yep.
And it's a frantic guitar riff frantic,
Absolutely.
awesome, amazing guitar riff.
Yep.
Like,
I'm a lyrics person though. So I mean, yes, I
yeah,
appreciate drumming. I've had many friends of mine who are musicians. Oh my God, you see the thing that Getty just, and the thing that Neil, and the thing,
oh
and
my
I'm
God.
just sitting there like, yeah, I appreciate that. Like I said, respect for one's instrument. I get it. But the lyrics have to really speak to me. So get out there, find your mitzvah. It's your turn to drive. Get out there and find your mitzvah. Make the world better, whether people notice or not, is all I got.
I love this conversation. You have a great day. We got to continue it at another point too. I mean, I'm going to put this on iHeart, Spotify, Google, YouTube, all that great stuff. And to share this with the world and this universe, and to have you share all this beautiful wisdom with me, it's an absolute honor. Again, you've changed my life, because if it wasn't for what you did in 1974 at a great radio station, being a pioneer for women's radio and radio in general as personality, and putting my favorite band on planet Earth on the map, my whole life is different.
Well, thank you very
Changed
much for
lives.
saying that. I one of the things that I feel the best about is the fact that I've kept in touch with so many of the fans over the years. And I'm very grateful that you wanted me on your show. I hope that the listeners and the viewers find it interesting.
Oh yeah, they're gonna
Love
definitely
to
find it.
everyone in this holiday season. Shine some light. We need it.
Absolutely. Donna, thank you. I can't thank you enough. Honestly, thank you.